So, hello everyone. Really happy to see you all here. In the moment, you can switch on your cameras if you like. And then in the later stage, you can switch it off again. You can't unmute yourself in the moment, but as we have breakout groups later, we will enable you to talk to each other as well. So really happy to have you here at the Climate Landscapes Conference. Just to say a couple of words about us. We are kind of a loose network of a couple of very engaged people around the subject of vegetation, soils, water, and climate. We had a German-speaking conference, which we organized in December last year with more than 200 participants, many of them scientists, from different institutions and organizations, but as well NGOs and companies and others. And that meeting was pretty successful, very interesting, and we with lots of exchanges as well. So at that point, actually, we decided to go a step further and go international as well, as we consider the subject. How can we cool the climate and rehydrate Earth's landscapes with vegetation, soil, and water as such an important thing that we thought it is really necessary to try that step as well from Germany into the world and invite you all for this subject with many really interesting presentations. And here I give over to Felix. We can't hear you. I'm asking you to unmute this.
So jetzt. Now, hi, my name is Felix Löwenstein, and I'm an organic farmer who was lucky enough to pass on the farm to his daughter a few years ago. For 20 years, I was chairman of the umbrella organization that organizes organic farmers and the processors and traders of organic food in Germany. And I'm a member of the board of FIBEL Research Institute for Organic Agriculture. In the political discussion of recent decades and in the media, the question has increasingly been how we need to make our agriculture resilient to the consequences of climate change. Unfortunately, the answers to this question are still given in the same logic that is inherent in our agriculture organized according to industrial principles. Actually, there is only one answer. We need to breed plants that can cope better with drought and salinization. And then the completely untenable claim is added that we have to do that by technically modifying of genome of the plants for this purpose. The fact that the decisive factor is a soil that is revitalized and rich in organic matter and can therefore absorb water in large quantities, store it, and drain the surplus into the groundwater is not mentioned in this discussion. And certainly not the issues we want to discuss today and tomorrow. The need to rethink and redesign landscapes so that they retain water, that they cool the climate and feed the small water cycle. However, certainly not the issues we want to discuss today and tomorrow. The need to, that's what is not discussed. I'm reading more and more now that we need sponge cities, trees in cities to lower the temperature, but it is never talked about that in northern and eastern Germany, in the north of France, in the south of Spain, or in Ukraine, and in many other places, we have agricultural landscapes that do not meet such requirements at all. We want to discuss with all of you today and tomorrow how we can bring this systemic thinking into politics and into public discussions. And Stefan, if I see it correctly, this is similarly necessary in the field where you work.
Yeah, strange. I'm asking you to unmute. Yeah.
So, Felix, thank you very much for this. We have in science a very similar problem. Science goes more and more into details, and due to the fact, and additionally due to the specialization, we have often the problem to bring the things at the end together again. Every has his or her own field in mind, but too little thought is given to complex contexts, which is also more challenging. What we need are inter and transdisciplinary concepts and synthesis. In science, we must concentrate much more also on synthetic tasks, as well as synthesis, meta-analysis, and so on. This is already the result of the complexity and the multifunctionality of our agricultural landscapes. Agricultural landscapes have not only the function to produce food or fodder and other things. Agricultural landscapes is for the people, is for water, is for climate regulation, and so on. And so we must focus on the problem of multifunctionality of these landscapes. That means we need more holistic or systemic approaches, but development shows that we are going step by step in the right direction. And this conference, I believe, is a chance to exchange our knowledge, to discuss via the different disciplines between practice and science and so on. And so I give back to Stefan Schwarzer.
Yes, wait. I have to share the right screen, which is this one here. Yes, and speaking about the systemic view, just to show you a little bit what our thoughts about this, if we think about vegetation, soils, and water, and one could say about habitat and diversity, and what this influences, we can see just a couple of items here, like the small water cycle, which influences the cloud building, the thermal radiation into space, the reflection of sunlight, clearly precipitations, humidity and dew. It influences the big water cycle or the larger water cycle. It can reduce thermal radiation. It can cool the atmosphere in the lower parts by evaporation. It is a flood protection, erosion control. It can increase groundwater recharge and clearly store more water in the soil. And if we look at the different cycles which interact here, we can see that, for example, if we speak about carbon, which is one major subject over the last couple of years, speaking about carbon farming, for example, clearly these elements are influenced by the amount of carbon stored or sequestered, for example. If we talk about water and how it influences those mentioned elements here, we see that they indeed influence many different different impacts here. And then if we go one step further, we see that energy, as speaking about the sunlight being transferred in latent heat or sensible heat and being transported from the ground to the atmosphere, we see that it's distributed on these different elements again. So highlighting what Stefan Klotz was saying, that we need to go further into the systemic view and seeing the interactions, the interconnections between the different elements, that is so important for really understanding how nature works and using nature really as the framework or as the good example for implementing at the end measurements or taking actions into the right direction, which will in principle help us all on these different levels. So this from my side here, looking a little bit at the systemic view, and I give over to Jan.
Yes, my name is Jan Schulze. Very nice to meet you all. A few words on my background. I worked as a management consultant. I'm an entrepreneur, and since 14 years, I'm a venture capitalist. So I'm very much part of our current economic system. I discovered regenerative agriculture five and a half years ago, and for the first time, I saw a solution to the problems we have created on this planet. I knew that we had destroyed substantial parts of our soils, but I did not know that you can rebuild healthy soils, or to be precise, soil carbon in a fairly short time through regenerative agriculture and regenerative forestry. I realized the enormous impact soil carbon has on the nutrition density and thereby the healthiness of our food, the positive correlation of soil carbon with the water storage capacity and the water infiltration rate of our soils, thereby creating resilience, and that soil carbon is a result of sequestering carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. And finally, through Walter Jehne, I learned how the soil vegetation water cycle works and that it depends on healthy soils, but is at the same time the natural way of cooling the planet and is one of the most ignored solutions to climate change. Now, what does that have to do with the economy? Well, our economy is an extractive economy. Growth of the economy has a negative impact on our natural world. Industrial agriculture and forestry are fundamentally destroying our soils and the water cycle. The reason this is happening is not because people in the economy are bad people. Somehow, most of us are part of the extractive system. The reason is not that we do not have the solutions to overcome an extractive economy. We know that regenerative agriculture is the way to go. We know that regenerative reforestation can heal the water cycle. The problem is that our economic system is disconnected from the natural system. Why is that? Well, what you measure is what you get. We do not measure the true cost. Our accounting system for businesses does not expect the business to account for what we call externalities, like destroying soil, polluting air and water, the impact of our health systems, etc. This is what we call negative externalities. That is why a conventional farmer can continue to operate at a lower cost than a regenerative farmer. If in Borneo, 80% of the indigenous forest is cut down to plant oil palm plantations, the cutting of one of the most diversified indigenous forests on this planet produces positive GDP. The planting of oil palms produces positive GDP. Why? Because we do not have in our GDP accounting a natural capital account, which would account for the tremendous loss of this indigenous forest. It is, from my point of view, therefore enormously important to help the decision makers in the economy to understand these connections. There are estimates that we have destroyed up to 90% of the natural abundance on planet Earth. Imagine a regenerative economy that is aligned with the natural system and where regenerating life produces positive GDP and profits for businesses. Imagine the innovation potential we have once we would accept that nature has far more superior solutions like the natural water cycle to overcome climate change, and that we need to align with these solutions. Overcoming climate change through regenerating our soils, our meadows, our forests, our landscapes, and retaining the rainwater on the land is by far the most capital efficient solution we have. That is why I'm involved with climate landscapes. We need to make sure that decision makers in politics, business, culture, religions, etc. understand that the solutions are all there. We just need to reconnect to them. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, I'm Sasa Franki from Klimapraxis. I'm a social scientist and social ecological entrepreneur. We are developing and managing projects for the promotion of regenerative agriculture, working together with farmers, scientists, and society. Here in the northeast of Germany, we try to put into practice systemic thinking. The region suffers from diminishing precipitation and from drought since 4 years. There is an acute need to take into account the compound structure of interlinked processes instead of one-dimensional approaches. This becomes evident here with an urgency which is as high as in few places in Central Europe. What can we learn here from semi-arid regions? And how can we implement climate landscapes? These are the questions which we ask ourselves. With this, I would like to give over to Julia Vespermann, who assists Stefan Schwarzer since months in organizing this conference. She will give us practical information about this event for today and tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Sasa. Hello, my name is Julia Vespermann. I'm a political scientist and I have supported the Network Climate Landscape since May. I'm giving you now a brief overview of the next 2 days so that you know what you can expect here. So as you might already have seen in the agenda, we will have 3 blocks of 3 to 4 presentations, 2 blocks today, 1 tomorrow. And after each presentation, there won't be much time for questions. So we have prepared some script pads that documents for each sections. And of course, you can always use the chat here at Zoom as well for communicating and writing your questions to the presentations. But if your questions could not be answered because of the time, then you can write it down in those documents. And you'll find the documents in the agenda on the website. And there's a link and you can just click on it and then you will automatically be led to the document and can write it down. Yeah, and you can use these documents as well in the discussion groups, because we have, after each block of presentations, it is followed by a discussion group in breakout rooms. And there you will have the chance to get to know each other a little bit, to exchange thoughts about the heard presentations and to network, because we believe that it is most important for all our work that we support each other, that we connect, that we join forces. And so we would like to create a lot of spaces during this conference where you can get to know each other and connect. Yeah. And today and tomorrow, there will also be presentations of success stories from all over the world, and to show what is possible and what has already been achieved. And tomorrow, after the last presentation and after the last success stories, there will be the time for the workshop sessions, because we have prepared several workshops, and you can already see it in the agenda, which workshops will be held and who's running them. But you have to, you have time to decide which one you would like to join until tomorrow. And we will conclude the conference tomorrow by coming together again and exchanging the results of the workshops and having a plenary discussion of what could be done in the future, what would be the next steps, and hopefully be all inspired and encouraged and well connected at the end of the conference. And enjoy the conference and meeting the others from all around the world. And now, Felix, it's your turn again.
Thank you, Julia. Now nothing can go wrong anymore. We forgot to tell you something. We forgot to explain what kind of a selection of people you have heard up to now. We have built a kind of a network, climate landscape network in Germany so far. And the 6 people you have seen up to now are part of that little network. So just to explain,